Welcome to the collection of the wildest and craziest AITA Reddit stories of all time. From wild betrayals to shocking twists, these tales will leave you questioning, who is really in the wrong? Let's dive in together. The first story for this collection is from infamous-berry-5875. My ex-boyfriend called my husband and said, "Your wife's was mine first. AITA for throwing away his things and blocking him." My ex and I broke up a long time ago. We live far away from each other, and even when we were together, we only saw each other 6 to 7 times in an 8-month period. I was very understanding, because his dad needed brain surgery. We broke up because I spent my Valentine's Day waiting to bail him out of jail. I broke up with him a few days later because I fell out of my bed, and he wouldn't even come to the ER to visit. It was a pretty amicable breakup. When my husband and I first started dating, I packed up all of my ex's clothes and his plushie he got from his uncle. I am in dental school, so I don't have time to drive out 1.5 hours, so I asked him to come pick it up and that my husband will be here. I thought this was a good way of handling things. I didn't want to take his stuff from him or keep them. Both my husband and I were on the phone when he called. However, he started saying I owe him a DJ, and it's okay if I cheated on my husband. I have never cheated on anyone, and it's not in me. I asked him what the hell he's talking about, and his reasoning was, "Well, when you were at the jail, someone who also had trials said he saw you giving another guy head." This is crazy talk, because I spent 18 hours in a jail waiting room to get you out, and someone you don't even know says they're giving head out in the parking lot of a jail. I was with his best friend for 8 hours of the waiting time. He had a DJ job, so at 2 a.m. he came and was with me because I was by myself. I basically cussed out my ex, threw away his box, and changed my phone number. I also left his mom a voicemail to check his closet and see how her son makes money. That was petty, I know. However, he did always cancel plans on me, tell me he doesn't have money, yet was able to go to Las Vegas for 2 weeks with his boys. They were selling drugs. The reason I feel bad is I know that the plushie he gave me was from his uncle who passed away and loved him a lot. I don't have his address anymore, so I can't ship it. My husband doesn't like him, and told him to leave me alone because he kept calling him and saying, "Your wife's was mine first," and he just told me to change my number. My husband and I are always together, and he means it as a joke, but he's like, "I check your location so I know you didn't get kidnapped and are in San Jose. That's where my ex lives." It's a bad situation we started making jokes about, because my husband is always with me, and he knows what I'm doing, and vice versa. I feel like an asshole because I'd be sad if someone I trusted enough with my baby teddy plushie threw it away. I tried to give it to him, but saying I was giving head to someone in a jail waiting room is crazy talk. Also, pro tip, you can look up the county the jail is, and as long as you have enough info, you can search the trial dates. It's completely free, a bit annoying to find, but I'll try to post the one that searches all jails, but it only works in California. If you don't have a name, it'll at least show you what they're in for and the times/dates of anything happening in the case. I know his information, and I checked the date of his case. No one had the same trial dates. What pissed me off even more was the day I was there. The only reason why I was there for so long was someone started a riot, so they weren't letting anyone in or out. One of my best friends is a cop, and he said he would double-check in case it was in another county or filed wrong. He explained to his boss what had happened, and they asked the defense attorney for the local county, and she was nice enough to ask other district attorneys. They asked me if I wanted to press charges, but I was honestly just confused. My husband was a huge trooper out of this. He was never angry at me once, and he knew I didn't do anything like that. He also comforted me and said it's okay because no one is going to hurt me. He knew from the way my ex was talking and pulling stuff out of his butt to see me again. My husband offered to go by himself and just tossed the box outside of the door. I don't remember his address, but I do know where his mom works. I figured this was a huge risk, and I just threw the box away. AITA? Thank you for anyone willing to listen. And I know I said calling, but I'm typing on a phone, but he would call my phone and yell at him, cussing and saying weird stuff like that. My husband told me to change my phone after he threatened to rape me and let us raise the baby if he loves me so much. It's just absurd. OP is not an AH. Rather, her ex-boyfriend is an AH for accusing OP of cheating and threatening her. Despite his behavior, OP wanted good for him. So I would rate OP's boyfriend 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. As for OP, she is a good soul who was there for her ex-boyfriend during his difficult time. Not only this, she was careful not to hurt his feelings even after their breakup. So, she is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Miss Moxie 2004. AITA for being rude to a nurse? I, 37F, am a respiratory therapist. It's a field that doesn't get a lot of respect, but all of us know this, and we roll with it. Sometimes I work in a ward that has loads of patients who have tracheostomies and are chronic ventilator users. This ward has great nurses and great CNAs, all except for one. This one nurse, Wendy 25F, fake name, is unpleasant at her very best. She comes off like she was born angry. She's nasty to RTs, CNAs, and even her fellow nurses. She claims her top priority is her patients and not her co-workers. But if you tell her that her patient needs her, she'll huff and make a face before taking care of her patient. A few nights ago, Wendy and I had a chronic ventilator patient whose tracheostomy site had some problems resulting in the site being packed in Surgicel. The patient came to us like this. Surgicel is a surgical packing for difficult wounds. All I know is that Surgicel is put in place by the doctor, and anyone below NPs or PAs cannot touch it. It's also out of my scope of practice. From the minute I walked in, Wendy started on me about the track site. I explained to her it was packed in Surgicel, and so I couldn't touch it. She became snippy with, "Oh, so you're an RT who can't clean a track site. What kind of RT is that?" I pointed out that I can and do clean track sites, just not ones packed in Surgicel, as the wound care team has to do that. She railed on me for 7 hours to clean the site and even accused me of neglecting the patient, even though touching the Surgicel was out of my scope of practice. I and her fellow RNs repeatedly explained that I couldn't touch it because of the Surgicel, and I certainly couldn't remove the Surgicel myself. She even railed on the PCAs for the track site, insisting they'd given the patient insufficient baths. CNAs can't clean track sites and can't touch Surgicel either, and these patients were impeccably clean. Finally, I got sick of Wendy's nonsense and called my charge, who came up with the nurse manager. All of us collectively explained to Wendy that RTs and CNAs cannot touch a site packed in Surgicel, full stop. The nurse manager added that she should already know this, and her behavior towards us was unacceptable. The wound care team would have to deal with it. It was 3 a.m. by then. Wendy stood indignant and looked at me and my charge. She sneered, "I'm so sick of you two. I don't want to hear another word out of either of you." I looked Wendy straight in the eyes and farted. All the nearby nurses bust out laughing. My charge started laughing. The nurse manager looked like she wanted to explode for about 5 seconds before she doubled over laughing too. Wendy turned bright red before she flipped her lid on me and stormed into the break room. The CNAs let me know how funny they thought that was. Since then, Wendy claims I made a laughingstock of her and no one respects her anymore. She also sneered that everyone loves the RT who can't clean a track site, but not a hard-working nurse like me. In a small hospital story like this, travel fast. So of course the whole hospital knows. The most common reaction I get is that I put Wendy in her place, although that wasn't my intent. It was spur-of-the-moment cheekiness. Thinking back, I think it was unprofessional and rude, but I was really sick of her. So I put to all of you AITA. Edit to add, I guess I forgot to put it in my original post. We were all in the hallway in front of the nurses' station. Not in the patient room when this exchange occurred. A few of you have mentioned human resources. They are very familiar with Wendy. She's had to be moved 6 times because she's so unpleasant. As of right now, she's being given the chance to change her behavior before more stringent actions are taken against her. Update. I didn't realize I forgot to update this story. There is an update. Though before I continue, thank you all for all your responses to my first post. I have to admit I got a big laugh out of the intentionally farted comments. Just to get it out of the way, I didn't get in any trouble for the fart heard round the hospital. Even my boss laughed when the charge told her the story, though I've been branded with nicknames like Toots and Windy Mindy. All in good faith and good fun, though. So, 2 weeks went by, and unfortunately, I was on the same ward and same night as Wendy. She was as always unpleasant and just plain nasty. But this time, she wouldn't even look me in the eye. If I told her a patient needed something, she ignored me. I'd just shrug it off and ask another nurse, and it would get done. There were two CNAs on that shift that night, Faith and Lovely, fake names. They're both lovely individuals and wonderful CNAs. Their patients are always clean and impeccably taken care of. For context, Lovely is from a war-torn part of the world, and at the time was awaiting word on the status of her family. We know now her family is alive and unharmed. Wendy, true to form, was being nasty to them that night, but they didn't complain. So, Wendy stonewalled and avoided me all night for a good 6 hours, which is not a great thing in healthcare. At around 2 a.m., she started on me about something to do with a chronic ventilator patient and how to determine what their settings should be. She stated something that was so wrong about vent settings, it made my head spin. Then, to top it off, she accused me of being careless for not taking her recommendation. I flat out told her she was completely wrong and pointed out the patient was well established in their ventilator settings. She huffed and left the room. 20 minutes later, the nurse manager asked me to come to the conference room because Wendy wanted to talk to me. I called my charge, who came with me. Wendy said that she didn't appreciate my disrespect regarding not making ventilator changes she'd asked for. My response was that her facts were wrong. The settings she wanted were inappropriate for the patient and would have hurt the patient. Eventually, the NM got her to admit she was still upset with me over the fart, that she felt disrespected and unheard. I admitted I could have handled the situation a little better and could have solved it without farting. Wendy claimed that nobody respects her anymore since the fart heard round the hospital. It was past 2:00 a.m., and frankly I can't even remember what came over me before I said what I said next. I said, "Wendy, what makes you think you were ever respected to begin with? Because the whole time you've been working here, you act like you hate every day. You're alive and every person you meet. You are so nasty to everyone you work with. You've had to be moved through every ward in the hospital, and then you had to be moved from day shift to night shift because the staff couldn't deal with you. There are RTs who refuse to work this ward because they don't want to work with you. What are you going to do when you run out of wards on night shift?" Wendy complained that she got irritated from having to fix the same problem repeatedly, to which I pointed out that she's at work. It's work, and it's why she gets paid for her time. I also pointed out that Lovely is waiting to find out if her parents, siblings, and nieces and nephews are alive. Yet she doesn't abuse her coworkers, and she has to take a ration of Wendy's garbage every time they work together. As for the nature of our work, healthcare is heart-wrenching and chronic care can be very unpleasant. But we're all working at the same place, so we're all suffering like her. I summed it up with, I shouldn't have farted at her, but there's no excuse for her behavior. After I said that, my charge added that there were few RTs willing to work this ward because of her. Our director is very familiar with her. The nurse manager nodded and said, "She's right, Wendy, and you and I need to have a sit-down about your conduct." We left the meeting, me with my head up and Wendy looking down. The next day, my boss told me to start writing Wendy up for improper conduct every time she's abrasive or mean. Human resources will handle it from there. Since then, Wendy has been mostly aloof, but she certainly hasn't been mean or nasty. She's been on that ward for a few months now, and I don't know where she stands with the rest of the nurses or if they'll want her moved again. I don't think the day will ever come where Wendy will be Miss Mary Sunshine, but at least she's no longer abusing her co-workers. That's pretty much it. I didn't get into any trouble. I certainly wasn't reprimanded. I flat out told Wendy that the way she treats her co-workers is completely unacceptable, and the management agreed with me. And if it wasn't abundantly clear already, I certainly wasn't required to get a colonoscopy or any other GI exam to determine if I intentionally farted. That's all for now, everyone. OP is not the AH for standing up to Wendy's toxic behavior and bullying. While the fart was unprofessional, it was a harmless reaction to Wendy's repeated bullying and unreasonable demands. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and Wendy 3.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now jump on to the next story from Advertising Mundane 69. AITA for going off at my ex-best friend. So, 2 years ago, I reconnected with someone I used to know. We were in the same sports team and went out for drinks to reconnect. Let's call her Beth for the sake of the story. Also, I feel the need to tell the whole story, so everyone understands the context. Beth and I became closer and eventually became the best of friends. We went on a girls' trip together, but if I am being honest, That's when I started doubting if this friendship was healthy. Our friendship was a bit unstable for a while and even had a really big fight. I still really wanted it to work out between us because she was my best friend, but I noticed everything was my initiative. I decided to see how long it would take for her to show interest in me or my life. 6 months, I heard nothing, no "how are you" or anything like that. It hurt me because I was showing so much interest in her and putting a lot of time and energy into that friendship, but got nothing in return. From my point of view, we grew apart. Beth, however, still called us best friends and thought everything was a-okay with us. That's when I decided that maybe we should talk, and I should point out what has been bothering me. The thing is, I didn't at first because if you really are best friends, showing any sort of interest in each other is below the bare minimum, and I didn't want her interest to become forced. But I also believe in what you don't change, you choose. So I texted her if she'd be open to have a chat. She asked, "What about?" I answered that some stuff has been bothering me in our friendship, and I want to talk to her about. She agreed but didn't have time anywhere soon because of how busy she was with school and everything. I asked her to let me know when she did have time. Fast forward to 3 weeks later. The other girls, Beth and I, went on a trip together. Beth and I drove there together. It was a 2 hours drive and we didn't talk the entire way there. Just blasted songs, fun, but I feel like it would have been a perfect time to talk, but I never got a chance to start anything up because a good song would come on and she would turn the music up and start screaming along. We arrived and settled in. For some context, I had just gone to a Taylor Swift concert 2 days before the trip and was so in awe of the whole thing, it made me an even bigger fan. I was watching some TikToks on the couch when a Taylor Swift TikTok came up, and all of a sudden, Beth goes, "Ugh, Taylor Swift. I don't understand what you like about her. She isn't even a good performer, and her stage presence nowhere to be found." I looked at her and said, "Well, what do you base that opinion on?" She goes, "Well, I only had to see like 3 videos for her to know she isn't." I was irritated and said, "Well, those videos were probably less than a minute, and I went to her concert that was 3 hours. Believe me, she is a good performer." And the discussion ended there. The rest of the trip I would sometimes make jokes with my best friend. Let's call her Leah. And when I saw a love sign, I joked, if there would be Anna behind that, it would be a Taylor Swift album. And then Beth wasn't even near us, but came around the corner just to tell me that Taylor Swift doesn't live up to the hype and that she is a bitch, and then she just took off. Now don't get me wrong, if someone would talk about something they like, but they got a little too obsessive, it is annoying, I get that. But if she didn't like it, she should have told me, "Hey, I get that you like her, but maybe we can talk about something other than Taylor Swift." And I would have totally understood. She, for example, likes K-pop, I do not at all. But I've never bashed her for it. Because K-pop stars are good performers, but it's just not for me. But she still saw us as best friends. And I feel like you shouldn't be so negative about something that your best friend is so passionate about. It sounds really pity, but in the 6 months that she showed no interest, I was actually doing pretty bad. Me and my ex had some issues, and I was really hurt about how he had treated me. Then I feel like I lost my best friend because she showed no interest or anything in me. So, the Taylor Swift concert coming up made me excited, and listening to the music more before the concert helped me get through some stuff. And even though she didn't know this, she still was talking down on something that was important to me. I went home a day early from the trip because of work. Driving home, I bawled my eyes out because I was so hurt by everything. By the time I came home, I was angry. I talked to my mom, and we agreed that I should just remind her if we could still have that chat. So, I texted with a reply to the earlier question to talk, "Hey, can we still have that chat soon?" She read the text, and half an hour later, I got an entire Bible full of how I ruined her night with the other girls, and that I shouldn't have brought this up while she was still on her trip. I agree that my timing was a bit off, but I did not see that reaction coming. I apologized for the off timing, but didn't understand why she was so mad, and that maybe we shouldn't do this over text and just talk when she comes back the day after. She said she wouldn't have time. We were going to have dinner with the girls when they got back and have some drinks later. I asked if we could please talk in between dinner and drinks. She agreed after a long discussion. The day after, we talked, and I said what was bothering me. She was just nodding her head and saying sorry in a high-pitched voice. I feel like she didn't listen to a word I said. Ever since, there's been tension, and she's been rude to me. Fast forward to a few months later, she broke up with her boyfriend. Me and the girls went over to Beth's house to support her. I debated going because I wasn't that close with her, But I know I was so hurt for her not being there for me, so I went anyways. Treat people the same way you want to be treated. Me and my friend brought wine and roses for her. We were chatting and one of my friends said, "I'm sad that the friend group is falling apart." And then Beth responded, "Yeah, me too, but that's all her fault," and pointed at me. I asked why. And then she said that I was picking fights with everyone, my ex, her, etc. I said, I don't agree, and that was standing up for myself and trying to talk it out whenever I felt I wasn't treated right. She brushed it off, but I felt so hurt because I knew it wasn't my fault, but I already had a guilt feeling about the friend group. Later that night, the subject of our summer vacation came up. Beth said she didn't think she was going to come with us because it would be too awkward with her and her ex. We're all in the same friend group. My ex is too. I was surprised because she has a big fear of missing out. But I understood. I drove my best friend Leah home, and she also mentioned that she was surprised about it, but we understood. The next day, we met to talk about the vacation plans and came up with a plan. For context, there was a vague plan, but we had to change it because two people planned a different trip around the original date. Beth knew this. Beth wasn't there because she didn't want to see her ex, even though he offered to stay home so she could go to the meeting. We came up with a plan, and we all agreed. Later that week, I texted to confirm something with the group in the group chat, and all of a sudden, she was going off at Leah because she wasn't a part of this plan, and we never discussed this date or destination with her. I texted her privately with these plans and why we made them. She went off at me and cussed me out for some things. I said I understood that she was upset, but she said she didn't want to go. She said I should have never assumed that she didn't want to go, because she said that when her emotions were out of control due to the breakup. I understood, but there was no other date available for us to all be able to go, and that I was sorry for the misunderstanding. She still went off at me. I called her to talk about this, and then she went back in her high-pitched voice apologizing. I was done with her cussing me out over text, and then being too sweet on the phone or real life. So now it was my turn. I went off at her. I said that her high-pitched voice could f*** off, and that she should open that big mouth of hers that she has over text to me. She hesitated, but went off. I said she had no right to treat me or my friend that way, and that it was a misunderstanding that she can't blame us for. And so on. We ended the phone call okay, but there's still tension. Even though there was still tension, I was invited to her birthday last week. I already knew I was not going because I wouldn't want people on my birthday that don't want to be there. So I did pay my share of the gift, but I didn't go. And I told her I wasn't feeling well. Now I haven't heard from the entire friend group except for my best friend. Of course, there's two sides to every story. So from her POV, I think I did something wrong. So after this incredibly long story and maybe a little too many details, was I the asshole? OP is not for standing up for herself when Beth tried to disrespect her. OP repeatedly tried to address issues between them maturely, but Beth always disregarded OP's feelings and make no effort to nurture the friendship. As for scores, I would rate OP 0 and OP's friend 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.